The day Aunt Lillian died, I was elbow deep in the garden, my fingers cradling the dark, loamy soil as I planted the Queen Elizabeth roses she'd given me for my 34th birthday. The air hummed with spring, a soft breeze weaving through the petals, their scent rising like a memory I couldn't quite place. These weren't just any roses, heirloom blooms, she'd called them, passed down through generations of Carters, their pink and red heads nodding as if they knew something I didn't. My knees pressed into the earth, grounding me, the sun warm on my neck, when my phone buzzed against the wooden bench nearby. Once, twice, 3 times. I ignored it at first, too lost in the rhythm of digging, the cool dirt slipping under my nails. But persistence has a way of breaking through. I tugged off my gloves, the fabric catching on my calloused hands, and reached for the phone. The screen glowed with an unknown number, and a knot tightened in my chest, unbidden. "Hello," I said, my voice softer than I meant it to be. "Miss Moore," came a formal tone, clipped and unfamiliar. "This is Robert Harrison, your Aunt Lillian's attorney. I'm afraid I have some difficult news." My heart stopped, a stone sinking through the soft soil of my chest. The roses, still clutched in my other hand, grew heavy, their thorns pricking my palm as if to wake me. "What happened?" I managed, though I already knew, the weight of his pause telling me more than words could. "Your aunt passed away in her sleep last night," he said, his voice softening, hesitating. "She left explicit instructions for me to contact you first, before anyone else in the family." The world tilted. I sank to my knees in the dirt, barely registering his words, the phone slipping against my ear. Aunt Lily, Lillian Carter to the world, but Lily to me, was gone. The woman who'd taught me to read, her finger tracing letters in old books when I was 6. The one who'd snuck me chocolate chip cookies at those dreary family dinners, her eyes twinkling with mischief even at 70. The one who'd believed in every dream I dared to whisper, her quiet strength a constant in my unsteady life. "Miss Moore, are you there?" Rob's voice pulled me back, a lifeline through the haze. "Yes," I croaked, swallowing the lump in my throat. "I'm here. What do you need me to do?" "She left specific instructions about her funeral arrangements," he said, pausing again. "And a letter that must be opened before the service. Would you be able to come to my office today?" I looked down at the roses, their petals trembling in the breeze, Lily's favorite, handed to me just 2 weeks ago. "These have been in our family for generations," she'd said, her voice low, conspiratorial. "Just like secrets." At the time, I'd laughed, brushing it off as her usual whimsy. Now, the words echoed, sharp and heavy, a riddle I hadn't solved. "I'll be there in an hour," I told him, my voice steadier than I felt. I set the phone down, the roses spilling from my hand into the soil. The garden blurred through tears, but beneath the grief, something stirred. Curiosity, maybe, or the faint pull of Lily's presence, urging me forward. She'd always known how to keep me guessing. The drive to Robert Harrison's office was a blur, the city's edges smudging past my window as I gripped the steering wheel, Lily's roses still vivid in my mind. His building loomed downtown, all glass and steel, but inside, his office was a relic, dark wood paneling, leather-bound books lining the shelves, a skyline view that stretched beyond my yearly salary. The air carried a faint mustiness, like secrets bound in old pages, and I stepped in, my boots scuffing the polished floor. Rob stood as I entered, a man of 58 with silver threading his hair, his suit crisp, but his eyes kind. "Miss Moore," he said, offering a sympathetic smile. "Thank you for coming so quickly. Please have a seat." I sank into a plush leather chair, its embrace too soft, too eager to swallow me. My hands fidgeted, still dusted with garden dirt, and I tried not to fidget as he settled behind his desk, its surface gleaming under a single lamp. "What's this about?" I asked. my voice small against the room's weight. Why did Aunt Lily want you to contact me first? He reached into a drawer, pulling out 2 envelopes, one thick, official-looking, stamped with his firm's letterhead. The other smaller, cream-colored, my name, Caroline, etched in Lily's elegant looping script. The sight of it twisted something inside me, a pang of loss laced with wonder. Your aunt was an unusual woman, Rob said carefully, his fingers resting on the desk. Brilliant in business, but also quite particular about how things should be done. She left very specific instructions about her will and her funeral arrangements. That sounds like Lily, I said, softly, a faint smile tugging at my lips. She'd always been a puzzle, sharp as a tack, yet whimsical, her rules bending only for those she loved. He slid the cream envelope across the desk, its edges worn but pristine. She wanted you to read this privately, he said. Then we can discuss the rest. My hands trembled slightly as I picked it up. Lily's distinctive perfume, roses and vanilla, clinging to the paper like a ghost. I opened it carefully, pulling out a single sheet of her personal stationery, the kind she'd used for birthday notes and cryptic little messages. My breath caught as I began to read. My dearest Caroline, if you're reading this, I've finally run out of time. Don't be sad. I've lived exactly the life I wanted, which is more than most can say. But I need one last favor from you, my darling niece. At my funeral, you'll need to read a letter, one that will change our family forever. You'll find it in the hidden compartment of my jewelry box, the one I showed you how to open when you were 12. Remember the trick with the rose carving? Some might call this revenge, but I prefer to think of it as justice. Long delayed perhaps, but justice nonetheless. The truth is, I've left everything to you. Carter Industries, my personal assets, all of it. But there's one condition. You must read that letter at my funeral with the entire family present. No exceptions. I know this is a lot to ask, especially now, but you've always been the strong one, Caroline, the honest one. That's why it has to be you. All my love, Aunt Lily P.S. Don't let them bury me in anything beige. You know how I feel about beige. I read it twice, each word sinking deeper, then looked up at Rob, my voice barely a whisper. She left everything to me? He nodded, opening the official envelope. Carter Industries, her personal estate, investment portfolios, approximately $89 million in total assets. But, as she mentioned, it's conditional on you fulfilling her final request. My head spun, a carousel of numbers and roses, her perfume still curling around me. Lily had always been generous. Books, advice, those roses. But this? This was beyond imagining. What about the rest of the family? I asked, thinking of my father, William, who'd always bristled at her success, my cousins Tyler and Lauren, who'd circled her like vultures. There are some small bequests, Rob said, but the bulk of the estate is yours, assuming you agree to her terms. When is the funeral? I asked, clutching the letter. 3 days from now, he replied. St. James Cathedral, followed by a reception at her estate. The entire family is expected to attend. I stood, the paper crinkling in my hand. Then I should go. I have a jewelry box to find. Miss Moore? Rob called as I reached the door. One more thing. She said, You'll know what to do with the truth. I nodded, stepping into the hall, the weight of her words blooming like roses in my chest. The drive to Lily's estate took 40 minutes, but it felt like hours, the road stretching endlessly as my mind raced with questions. What secret could be so vital that she'd tie her entire legacy to it? What truth waited in that second letter? The gates of her Victorian mansion swung open automatically, recognizing the code she'd given me years ago with a wink, saying she trusted me more than her security system. The house rose before me, a sprawl of elegance framed by gardens where her beloved roses climbed every surface, their thorny embrace guarding her world. I stepped out, the gravel crunching under my boots, and inhaled the familiar scent. Earth and blooms, a perfume uniquely hers. Nancy Ellis met me at the door, her eyes red from crying, her 62 years etched deeper in her face today. "Oh, Miss Caroline, I'm so glad you're here," she said, her voice trembling. She left instructions. You're to have full access to her rooms. I squeezed her hand gently. "Thank you, Nancy. I won't be long." She nodded, stepping aside, and I climbed the curved staircase to Lily's bedroom on the second floor, my heart thudding with each step. The room greeted me like an old friend, its silk curtains in bright patterns swaying softly, modern art mingling with family portraits on the walls. Everywhere, touches of her roses, vases, paintings, the view of her prize garden through the window, whispered her presence. The jewelry box sat on her dresser, exactly where it had always been, its Brazilian rosewood gleaming under the soft light, intricate floral carvings tracing its edges. I ran my fingers along it, feeling the years fall away to when I was 12, and Lily, with a conspiratorial grin, had shown me its secret. "Third petal from the left," I whispered, pressing the tiny rose carving she'd taught me to find. A soft click sounded, and a panel in the bottom slid open, revealing a wax-sealed envelope marked in her hand. "To be read at my funeral." My hand shook as I lifted it, heavier than I'd expected, the faint outline of photographs pressing against the paper. For a moment, I was tempted to tear it open right there, to unravel her mystery in the quiet of her room, but I stopped myself. Lily did everything with purpose. If she wanted this revealed at her funeral, she had her reasons. I turned, the envelope clutched close, and my gaze caught on a framed photo I'd never noticed before, resting on her bedside table. It showed a young Lily, maybe 27, standing in front of Carter Industries' first office, her hair wild and her smile, that knowing smile, lighting her face. She looked invincible, a woman who'd built an empire, yet the photo felt like a clue, a piece of the puzzle she'd left me to solve. "What did you know, Aunt Lily?" I murmured to the image, my voice barely audible over the hum of the garden beyond. What secret was worth waiting a lifetime to reveal? I slipped the envelope into my bag, its weight settling against my hip, and took one last look around. The room seemed to hold its breath, as if waiting for me to carry her truth forward. I thought of her voice, 2 weeks ago, low and teasing, just like secrets. Back then, it had been a quip, a flicker of her whimsy, but now it loomed larger, a thread tying her roses to this moment. I descended the stairs, thanked Nancy, and stepped back into the daylight, the roses nodding as I passed. Whatever lay in that envelope, it was more than paper. It was Lily's final gift, her last riddle, and I'd see it through, just as she'd known I would. The morning of the funeral dawned bright and clear, a cruel contrast to the ache in my chest. I dressed carefully in a deep blue suit, Lily's favorite color, pinning one of her prized roses to my lapel, its petals soft against the fabric. The envelope rested in my bag, heavy with more than just paper and photographs, a silent promise I couldn't shake. St. James Cathedral stood regal when I arrived, its stone walls awash in deep red and pink roses, no beige in sight, just as she'd wanted. The pews brimmed with faces, family, business associates, city officials, all drawn by the Carter name, old money, and Lily's towering legacy in philanthropy and industry. The air thrummed with anticipation, thick with floral scent, as I stepped inside. My father, William, intercepted me at the entrance, his 63 years taut with anxiety, his grip on my arm too tight. "Caroline, we need to talk about the will," he said, his voice low and urgent. "Rob won't tell us anything, says we have to wait till after the service. What's going on?" I met his eyes steadily, feeling the envelope's weight against my side. "We'll all find out together, Dad," I said, my tone firm. "That's what Lily wanted." He hesitated, then let go, his face a mask of barely controlled tension as I moved past. In the front row, my cousins, Tyler and Lauren, leaned forward, their 36 and 33 years sharpened by greed, vultures awaiting their share. The service unfolded beautifully, exactly as Lily would have demanded. Vibrant flowers, a minister praising her generosity and intellect, her dedication to a better world. I sat, hands clasped, until Rob caught my eye from the front pew and gave a slight nod. It was time. My legs carried me to the podium, the envelope clutched tight, my pulse racing as the cathedral fell silent. Hundreds of eyes watched me, Bill's barely controlled stare, Tyler and Lauren's eager glares, strangers who'd known her power but not her heart. I took a deep breath, the scent of roses filling me, and in that moment I could almost feel Lily beside me, her strength steadying my trembling hands. Before she died, I began, my voice carrying despite my racing heart. My Aunt Lily left me a letter with specific instructions. She wanted it read here, today, in front of everyone who knew her. I broke the wax seal slowly, aware of every gaze, and pulled out several sheets of paper, photographs slipping free. A strangled sound escaped Bill as I held up the first, a young Lily beside a man I didn't recognize, both smiling over blueprints. The second showed him at a construction site, the early bones of Carter Industries rising behind him. My name was Lillian Carter, I read, my voice steady now. And this is the truth about how Carter Industries began. The cathedral hushed as her words unfurled. The man in these photographs is James Randall, a brilliant engineer and my business partner in 1975. He was the true co-founder of what would become Carter Industries. Murmurs rippled through the pews, Bill's face drained of color. We met at university, I continued, sharing a vision of sustainable building materials to revolutionize the industry. Jim had the technical genius, I had the business acumen. Together, we built the foundation of Carter Industries, equal partners, 50-50 in patents, profits, everything, until October 15th, 1976, when Jim died in what was reported as a car accident. I pulled out another photo. Lily and Jim shaking hands over a contract, then kept reading. But it wasn't an accident. His brake lines were cut. I discovered this too late, after the police closed the case, and found something else. Papers filed hours before his death, transferring his share to the Carter Family Trust, bearing his signature. I looked up, meeting Bill's eyes directly. A signature I now know was forged by his business partner at the time, my own brother, William Moore. The cathedral erupted in gasps and whispers. Bill shot to his feet, his face contorted with rage. "Stop this immediately," he shouted. "This is slander." I held up the stack of documents, contracts, forensic analyses, buried police reports, bank transfers. "No, Dad," I said calmly. "This is truth." Lily kept everything. Tyler stared at Bill, horror dawning. "Why reveal this now?" he asked, voice shaking. I turned back to the letter. "I'm revealing this now because I've spent 45 years building this company into something Jim would have been proud of. Funding research, supporting sustainable development, creating opportunities for minds like his. But I've also watched my brother profit from his crime, raising his children to believe privilege puts them above the law." Bill sank back, the fight draining from him. "I should have come forward years ago," I read on. "But by the time I had the evidence, the company employed thousands. Going public would have destroyed not just Bill, but countless innocent families. So I waited, built, ensured the truth could surface without ruin." A final document emerged, a yellowed envelope for Jim's daughter, Abigail Randall. "Over the years, I've anonymously funded Abby's education, her work in sustainable engineering, watching her become the ethical scientist her father was," I read, my voice growing stronger. She runs a leading green tech firm, never knowing who backed her. Gasps rose as a woman stood from the middle pews. Abby, 34, with Jim's dark eyes. Lily's orchestration complete. My will leaves 30% of Carter Industries to Abigail Randall as restitution, I finished, and the controlling interest to my niece, Caroline, the only Carter who shares the ethics and innovation Jim and I cherished. Signed, Lillian Carter, co-founder and keeper of its greatest shame. Silence fell, deafening. Then Abby walked forward, stopping before Bill. All these years, she said, her voice trembling, I thought my father was a failure. I never imagined. I stepped down, meeting her tearful gaze. I'm so sorry for what was taken from you, I said. She nodded, tears spilling. Your aunt watched over me my whole life, didn't she? Trying to make it right. I smiled softly. In her own way, yes. The reception at Lily's estate unfolded in a haze, the grand hall echoing with voices that splintered into factions as swiftly as the cathedral had hushed. Some relatives demanded the letter be suppressed, their whispers sharp with fear of scandal, while others insisted on police action, their outrage simmering beneath strained civility. Most sat in stunned silence, glasses clinking awkwardly against plates of untouched food. I stood by the window, gazing at the rose garden beyond, its blooms swaying in the late afternoon light, their beauty a quiet rebuke to the chaos inside. Bill had vanished the moment the service ended, slipping out before I could speak to him, his absence a void that pulsed louder than words. I wouldn't hear from him for weeks, not until a terse message arrived, saying he'd checked into a rehabilitation facility, the guilt he'd carried for 45 years finally breaking through. In the days that followed, the truth about Carter Industries spilled into the public. Headlines blooming like weeds, fraud, murder, a legacy rewritten. Yet Lily had been right. The company was strong enough to weather it, its roots deep from her decades of care. Abby and I met the next morning, her dark eyes still red from tears, but her handshake firm as we sat in a quiet cafe. I don't know how to thank you, she said, her voice soft but steady. Reading that letter, it gave me my father back, in a way. I smiled faintly, stirring my coffee. It was Lily's doing, not mine. She planned everything, even you being there. Abby nodded, a wistful look crossing her face. She was watching over me, wasn't she? All those scholarships, the grants. I thought it was luck. She couldn't let the truth die with her, I said, meeting her gaze. She protected the company, its people, even my father in her way. But you? She made sure you'd thrive. Abby's lips curved, a fragile hope taking root. We talked for hours, sketching a future for Carter Industries, one built on sustainability, the vision Lily and Jim had shared. Over the months, that vision took shape. Abby's technical expertise wove seamlessly with my commitment to Lily's ethics, and the company began a new chapter, its tarnished past fueling a drive to do better. The family rift widened. Tyler and Lauren sent bitter texts, their small bequests a sting they couldn't forgive. But I let them fade, focusing instead on what Lily had entrusted me. A year later, I stood in her rose garden, the blooms now more vibrant than ever, their pink and red heads bowing under a gentle breeze. Abby joined me, as she did most weeks, our meetings a blend of company strategy and shared wonder at the path we'd inherited. She reached out, touching a Queen Elizabeth rose with care. You know what's strange? She said, her voice thoughtful. I always felt someone guiding me, nudging my career from afar. I used to think it was my father's spirit. Now I know it was Lily. I nodded, brushing my fingers against another bloom, its petals cool against my skin. She tried to protect everyone, the company, its employees, you, even Dad. She just couldn't bury the truth forever. Abby tilted her head, studying me. Do you think she made the right choice, waiting all those years? I paused. the question settling like dew on the roses. I think she did the best she could with an impossible situation, I said finally. She turned a company built on fraud into a force for good, made sure you were taken care of, and in the end, she let the truth breathe, on her terms. Abby smiled, a quiet agreement, then asked, "And you? Do you ever regret being the one to reveal it?" I looked out over the garden, remembering Lily's knowing smile, her cryptic hints, the strength she'd seen in me. "No," I said, my voice firm. She chose me because she knew I could handle it, knew I'd see that doing right sometimes means facing the hardest truths. That evening, in Lily's study, now mine, I sat sorting through company reports when I found a small note tucked into her old desk calendar, dated the day she died. Her elegant hand danced across the page. "Dearest Caroline, if you're reading this, you've done what I asked, faced the truth with grace. That's why I chose you, not just to inherit the company, but to make it better, to make it what Jim and I dreamed it could be." My breath caught, tears pricking my eyes as I read on. "The roses will bloom again next spring. When they do, remember, beauty can grow from the darkest soil if we have the courage to plant it. All my love, Lily." I set the note down, its words a final embrace, and knew she'd been right all along. The study was mine now, though it still felt like Lily's, its walls steeped in her essence as evening light spilled through the open window. The scent of roses drifted in, carried on a breeze from the garden, their golden hues catching the setting sun like a promise kept. I sat at her desk, my desk, company reports spread before me, their numbers a map of the future Abby and I were building. The note from Lily rested beside them, its edges curling slightly, her words a quiet companion as I worked. Tomorrow would bring meetings, decisions, the weight of a multi-million-dollar legacy pressing down. But for now, I lingered in the stillness, letting the day's demands wait. I leaned back, my gaze drifting to the garden, where the roses glowed, each bloom a testament to her care. She'd left me more than a company, more than wealth. She'd left me a chance to right an old wrong, to build something meaningful from the ashes of betrayal. The truth she'd guarded for 45 years had been heavy, its revelation a storm that shook our family to its roots, but I'd carried it as she'd known I would. Not to destroy, not to punish, but to heal, to plant something new in the soil of the past. I thought of her final note, her faith in me etched in every line, and felt her presence settle around me, that knowing smile hovering in the air. The heaviest inheritances, I realized, aren't measured in money, but in the truths we choose to carry, blooming like roses from shadowed soil. Lily had borne hers with grace, turning guilt and greed into a legacy of good, and she'd trained me to do the same. I'd taken her gift, her trust, and woven it into a partnership with Abby, a vision that honored Jim's brilliance and her own. The company stood stronger now, its purpose clear, and the garden outside thrived, a living echo of her lessons. I touched the note once more, its paper soft under my fingers, and whispered, "You were right, Lily. It's never too late for truth to bloom." The sun dipped lower, painting the roses in shades of gold, and I sat in the quiet, surrounded by their scent. Somewhere I knew she was watching, proud that her final secret had found its way into the light. Tomorrow I'd face the world she'd left me, its challenges, its possibilities. But tonight, I rested in her study, the weight of her love lighter than I'd ever imagined. Beauty had grown here, from the darkest soil, because she'd had the courage to plant it, and I'd had the strength to let it flourish. That was her true inheritance, and I'd carry it forward, step by steady step, just as she'd always believed I could.